All right, guys. So Mehdi Hasan of Zateo News, highly recommend you guys go and subscribe to him, by the way. But he recently went and did a debate with the former spokesperson for Israel's genocidal war on the people of Gaza, this guy, Eylon Levy, who I've covered many times before on this channel. And this went, I think, exactly as you would expect it to go. Mehdi Hasan absolutely cooked him throughout the entirety of this. You can go and find the full thing. I think it's on Zateo's YouTube channel if you want to watch the entirety of it. But I have 3 different clips here that I think summarize it pretty well that I want to show you guys. So first, to start off here, we have Mehdi pressing Eylon on specific examples of potential war crimes from the Israeli government inside of Gaza. Let's go ahead and see how Eylon responded to this.
I actually want to agree. I want to agree with something Eylon said. Proportionality is a difficult subject, and we shouldn't talk about this in abstract. X number here, Y number there. Let's talk specifics. The problem with a lot of spokespersons of Israel, they want to talk in abstract. I want to talk in specifics. So if we talk about proportionality, we talk about discrimination, we talk about war crimes. Last October, shortly after October 7th, Israeli forces struck a 3-story residential building in Gaza City. They killed 15 members of the Al-Dos family, 7 children. According to Amnesty International, the survivors say no warnings. Eylon told us there were warnings. No warnings were given to evacuate. Amnesty found no evidence of any military targets in the area, and Israel to this day has offered no explanation for that strike. So for the dead Al-Dos family members, Eylon, can you tell us why they were killed?
Mr. Hassan, the IDF does not owe you immediate answers, and the fact that Amnesty speaks to local witnesses intimidated by Hamas does not mean that there was not a military target.
But was there? Because Israel has never said there was a military target.
Hamas booby-trapped 40% of Gaza's buildings. It dug tunnels underneath homes and schools.
We're back to generalities, Eylon.
No, not
Why did
generalities.
you kill 15 members of the
Mr.
Al-Dos
Hassan,
family?
I do not know, and I do not need to explain every single strike.
You do. That's what you're here today.
Mehdi,
No, Mr. Hassan.
So a couple of things there from that first clip. Obviously, Eylon doesn't want to discuss the specifics of this strike or the specifics of any strike that have taken place in Gaza because, as Mehdi points out there, it's very easy for people who want to defend Israel's actions inside of Gaza to speak in general terms and to say, well, Hamas has tunnels underneath Gaza and they've operated in, areas near civilians. And so every single death in Gaza is their fault, not ours. Our hands are clean. But when you get into specifics, that's when it becomes a little bit more difficult. Right? This was one example of them leveling a residential building, but there are other examples as well. How about the killing of Hind Rajab alongside the rest of her family, where they shot, countless rounds into this vehicle that she was in? She made a desperate pleading call to, I believe it was the Palestinian Red Crescent, to come and to help her after the rest of her family had been killed. Then, not only did Israel kill her along with the rest of her family, but they also killed the medical workers who were going to try and to rescue her. Do we have any explanation for that? Was there Hamas hiding in the ambulance that was going to try to rescue her? I mean, how about the WCK strike, the World Central Kitchen workers who were killed in a targeted strike where the missile that this convoy was hit with, an aid convoy, it went directly through the top of the vehicle where the logo of the World Central Kitchen was? How about that strike? Any explanation for that? How about the countless doctors, including American doctors who have gone over to Gaza to try to help there, who have returned back and reported that they saw children with single sniper bullet wounds to the head and to the chest? Were Hamas militants hiding behind each one of these countless children who were sniped through the head? When you get into the actual specifics of examples of Israeli strikes or killings that have happened inside of Gaza over the last 11 months, then it gets a little bit more difficult to deflect and to just say, well, Hamas is to blame for all of these because there are tunnels underneath Gaza, right? Keep in mind, Israel has struck residential buildings, including the majority of the housing in Gaza, displacing the vast majority of the population there. They've struck schools and mosques and churches and refugee buildings and UN shelters, everything under the sun. Farmland, water infrastructure. They've targeted aid workers and journalists over and over and over again. The idea that you can brush that off by saying Hamas, Hamas, Hamas is just kind of ridiculous. at face value, right? Now, again, that was just one example. There are countless other examples that he could have brought up there, but now we move on to the second clip that I have here, which was Mehdi Hasan's closing statement, where I think he summarizes the Israeli defender position here pretty succinctly. Let's go ahead and watch this clip.
Your argument for why Israel's actions in the Gaza war were not justified.
Ladies and gentlemen, were the actions of Israel in Gaza justified? Look, the argument is pretty simple tonight and pretty hypocritical from Eylon. What we've heard tonight is that nothing justifies October the 7th, but October the 7th justifies everything. Well, I'm here tonight to tell you, no, October the 7th does not justify everything. It does not justify the suffering in Gaza. It does not justify the killing of kids in Gaza. It does not justify the starvation in Gaza. It does not justify the rape and torture of Palestinian detainees, which Eylon refused to condemn tonight. It does not justify any of that. It doesn't justify the tearing up of the Geneva Conventions, the defiance of international law and the ICC and our own Leahy law. Yes, October the 7th was a war crime, but the response to a war crime is not to commit your own series of war crimes on an epic scale. 33 times as many people killed since October the 7th as were killed on October the 7th. And I'll say this to you. Look, very, very clearly, if you support this motion tonight, you are opening the gates of hell. Not just in Gaza, but globally, because every dictator and tyrant around the world will say, Israel's actions were justified? Then so are mine. Putin, Assad, Kim, they'll all say, Israel killed kids. Israel killed aid workers. Israel killed journalists. So can we. And I will be very clear. I will be very clear with you tonight. If you are here tonight, ladies and gents, if you're here tonight to defend what Israel's done, knowing full well what Israel has done, if you're defending the human suffering in Gaza, the amputation of little kids, if you're doing that in full knowledge, then you're not just here to defend the indefensible or justify the unjustifiable. I'm sorry, you're a sociopath. And I will say to you,
I mean, listen, he's 100% correct. Now, in terms of the final couple of things that he was explaining there, if you're defending the suffering in Gaza, then I'm sorry, you're a sociopath. The main question of this debate was, were Israel's actions post-October 7th justified, yes or no? Now, given what we have seen in Gaza, he points out, the countless amputations, the traumatization of children inside of Gaza due to Israel's onslaught. He talked about throughout this debate, again, the destruction of civilian infrastructure, the targeting of aid workers, the targeting of journalists, the targeting of civilians over and over and over again, with no evidence provided whatsoever that there were, valid military targets. He talks about the torture and the rape of Palestinian detainees inside of Israeli detention centers. He talks about the blocking of aid from getting into this starving population. So he covered all of the different various points there of what has been happening over the last 11 months. And I completely agree with him that if you are aware, it's one thing if you haven't been keeping up with what's going on and you just don't know anything, and so you're sort of taking a neutral position, okay, that's one thing. I think you should be keeping up with it, but put that to the side. But if you are fully aware of what Israel is doing in Gaza, and you're saying that's justified, then at this point, I really don't even know what to say to you other than that's sociopathic behavior. There is nothing to justify this. One of the most intense bombing campaigns, if not the most intense and brutal bombing campaigns in modern history. In the modern history of warfare, there is almost nothing compared to the amount of destruction and death that has been levied against Gaza for the last nearly a year at this point. And again, fully endorsed by the United States, armed, funded, given diplomatic cover. And so I think it's pretty clear. Now, tying back to the first clip where he mentions Amnesty International and Eylon Levy is rolling his eyes in the background. Basically, at this point, in order to try to justify what Israel is doing, you have to disregard the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice, the majority of countries on the face of the planet, as well as every single major, reputable human rights organization in the world, including Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, B'Tselem, an Israeli organization, Oxfam International. I've shown you guys the reports from all of these human rights organizations, and it's unanimous. It's unanimous at this point that what Israel has been doing in Gaza is a violation of international law. They have committed a series of war crimes, time and time and time again. To me, at this point, this is not in dispute. This is not a difficult or a complicated issue. This is not Israel defending itself. This is a genocide, as clear as day, as clear as you could possibly ask for. So I think that he's 100% correct in his closing statement there. Now, we move on to the final clip here, where Eylon apparently posted this on his own Twitter. And I guess he thought that this was his sort of like gotcha moment in this debate, where he walked over, and you can see this little yellow pin here that he has on his jacket. And this is like the Israeli hostage pin, right, that people have been wearing. And he tries to go and throw it in Mehdi's face and get him to put it on during the debate. And let's just go ahead and see how Mehdi handles, I think, what is pretty obviously like a little bit of stage theatrics here from Eylon.
You really care about the hostages.
Let me ask you, we got
I
a
have
little
a
stunt going
spare
on
hostage
here.
pin
We have a
here.
little stunt
If you
here.
want to show them, you
Got
can.
it.
You're welcome to put
Got
it
it.
on your
All right.
platform.
All right, this is fantastic. Let's go. So,
Put it on. Show them you care. Show them you care.
So,
I am in
yeah,
daily
let's
contact
go.
with the
Can I
hostage
speak?
families. I tell them I will do whatever it takes to help you get your kids home. Show them you care and stop trying to exploit the
Okay,
hostages'
okay.
suffering.
This is like a
Eylon,
going
allow
on
him to
here.
respond. You've got your bit of
So-
stagecraft.
So
Please take it.
Let's be clear. Let's be clear. You saw the very, very performative outrage there from Eylon there. To be clear, don't you lecture me about hostages when your government has killed more hostages than it has rescued. That's on you. That's on you.
That's right.
And that's
That is on Hamas.
After this.
That is on Hamas.
Let me
Hamas.
answer this. Let me
Hamas
answer this.
is
I
thinking-
will.
All right, all
I
right,
will-
all right.
No, I need to finish this point.
I'm going to let you finish this point, and then we're moving on.
I will happily support this pin because I support the release of all the hostages and let me finish. And I support the release of thousands of Palestinian detainees being raped and tortured and children. Do you support that? Let's wear it together. Do you support the
Put it
release?
on.
Do you support the release of Palestinians?
I
Children.
do not
Do you
support the
support
release of terrorists.
of Palestinian children? Do you support the release of Palestinian children being
Mr. Hassan,
tortured?
anyone
Let's
who is...
get some space
He
here.
can't answer the question.
Mr. Hassan, he won't
I
put on the
answered it.
hostage pin.
I support the release of all innocent people.
Mehdi?
He doesn't.
Notice the difference there. Pretty clear-cut difference between Mehdi and Eylon. Mehdi is saying he wants the hostages, the Israeli hostages who are being held by Hamas, to be released, and he also wants the thousands of Palestinians who are being held hostage by Israel, tortured, raped, etc., inside of their detention camp to be released as well. That's the actual principal position to take. Now, let's remind ourselves. Who is the main blockade to a ceasefire deal that could potentially result in the hostages being released? It's Benjamin Netanyahu. It's been Benjamin Netanyahu for a long time now. In fact, there was recently reporting that came out just a few days ago that Benjamin Netanyahu is saying he is not going to even entertain the idea of having a conversation about a ceasefire either in Gaza or in Lebanon now until after the November presidential election takes place. I'll leave you guys to guess exactly what his political goals are in making that sort of a calculation. But the main point that needs to be emphasized here is that for Eylon Levy to get up there and to do this showboating, this fake stage performance about how much he cares about the hostages that are being held inside of Gaza, as Mehdi pointed out there, Israel has killed more of their own Israeli hostages than they have rescued through military means. The only time where there was a bulk release of Israeli hostages back to Israel was when? It was back in November of 2023 when there was a temporary ceasefire deal that was put in place. That's the only time that there was a bulk release of hostages. That's what should have happened months and months and months ago, but the Israeli government has been standing in the way of it because they don't want to end their genocide in Gaza. They don't want to pull out of Gaza. They don't want an actual end to this genocide. Why? Because, as we know, Benjamin Netanyahu's political coalition that he has in place right now is incredibly fragile, right? It's incredibly fragile. And he knows the second that he would agree to end the genocide, to end the escalation with Lebanon, to end this ongoing tit for tat with Hezbollah and elements in Iraq and Syria, the second that he ends that would be the end of his political career. And so he has been unwilling to do that. He's been standing in the way of that month after month after month. And the U.S. government under the Biden administration is carrying along with that. We are literally right now sending troops to the region to potentially back up Israel in the case that the escalation with Hezbollah spirals completely out of control. The escalation with Hezbollah would not be happening if there was a ceasefire in Gaza, period. right? The blockade of the Red Sea that the Houthis in Yemen have been engaging in would not be happening if Israel would agree to end the genocide in Gaza. So we're on the precipice right now of having the entire region blow up into a massive, wider war on behalf of basically Benjamin Netanyahu's political career. That's what we're on the verge of allowing to happen. And so credit to Mehdi Hasan. I think he did a very solid job throughout this debate. If you want to go watch the entirety of it, again, I'm pretty sure it's on Zateo's YouTube channel. These were the main highlight moments that stood out from me. But I think at this point, again, if you are somebody who is defending what Israel is doing, you're either directly working for the Israeli government, or you're ignorant, or potentially you're taking money from the Israeli government, or I don't know what else could potentially be the motivation at this point. But it's, as he said there, it is trying to justify the unjustifiable. It is trying to explain the inexplicable, right? This is not something that is defendable at this point, right? And it's not even close.
Politic guy has the best politics. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying